Yes. So what makes work joyful for you?
Me, more than anything, is laughter. And I realized, I think it's the sort of joy of affiliation, the joy of feeling part of something. It's really interesting. I spent a lot of time since I started doing my podcast and since I sort of turned it into a book, asking people, oh, when was your favorite time at work? What was your favorite time? What was your favorite job? And, quite often people can describe to me scenarios where maybe the company wasn't doing so well, but there was a real team spirit. There was a real sense of shared endeavor. Or they'll describe to me a scenario where maybe the boss wasn't the best boss, but there was a camaraderie. There was a sort of a brotherhood, a sorority amongst the people who were working there. But very often they'll say, I just laughed a lot then. I just, we just laughed then. And I'm really taken with that. It's fascinating that when we describe our best times working, and they might be that we've worked far more hours than we ever intended, or there might be very stressful scenarios. I've spoken to firefighters, I've spoken to combat soldiers, and they'll describe situations that I think would be astonishing and shocking to you and I, but they'll describe how we laughed so much though. We just had such a connection, and that's what I'm taken with. For me, that's definitely my experience. I love laughing, with colleagues, with people. I love it. I love it.
Yes, yes. I bet you've walked into organizations where it felt a little like a wet blanket was hanging over everything. It's so oppressive, and you have to work to get your energy over that. You know what I mean? Then now you got
Very
double
much
effort.
so.
Yeah.
Well, I remember going to one organization that I actually worked at, and the first day I walked in there, I was astonished at the silence. There was just, I'd always worked in maybe environments where there were so many people crammed in that there was a natural boisterous energy to the place that I was working. And then I went to one place where it was pin drop silent. And very quickly, over the course of the next few months, it became clear no one spoke to each other. Yeah. And so as a consequence, if you don't speak to anyone around you, work can be very strange. It can be a very lonely place. There was one statistic I saw that 40% of us say that we don't have a single friend at work. And I think, when we don't have any friends at work, when we don't feel any sense of bond, then our whole working life can feel like a life sentence. It can feel like a long, enduring period of time that we're in a period of probably forced solitude, really.
Yep. Yes. Yeah. So your book has 30 hacks for bringing joy to your job. And I thought I would ask, what are some of your favorites? What are some of the things you just love to talk about?
Really simply, more than anything, as I mentioned to you, I set about trying to create a cookbook that anyone could read one chapter, like a cookbook. You read one chapter and you do one thing. And so, I set about trying to work out ways to do that. Now, even though it's about improving team dynamics, it's about improving team culture, actually it starts with 12 personal interventions. Right. So how can any of us feel less burnt out by our job, less exhausted, less annoyed when we're going home? And some of these are, you might consider them almost too trivial. Going for a walking meeting. In fact, if you ever find yourself, Dan, suggesting going for a walking meeting, the first time you do it can be deeply awkward. Someone says, hey, we're due to get together. And you say, do you want to do it? We walk around the block twice. And, they might look at you like you've taken leave of your senses. And in fact, the first time you do it, it can be awkward. However, if you persist with it, we seem to get a whole heap of extra energy when we're outdoors. And we get even more when we walk through nature. If there's a park nearby your office, then this can be an incredible thing to do. My favorite thing about walking meetings is that I have had someone say to me, we couldn't do that because it's really important that we preserve confidentiality. And what I want to offer that person by means of sort of confirmation is that walking meetings were the preferred modus operandi for the mafia. So one of the most senior mafiosa who was ever prosecuted in court, whoever testified in court, he was asked about walking meetings, and he said, "We never talk in a club, we never talk in a house, we never talk in a car, we never talk in a bar. We only talk in walking meetings." And I thought two things. I thought it sounds like a Dr. Seuss novel. It sounds like a sort of mafia Dr. Seuss novel. And number two, just a good reminder that probably us talking about our plans in the middle of the park probably isn't going to give an insight to the competition.
Right, right. Okay, I love it. I'm with you. I have noticed that sometimes when you walk, especially if it's two people, I have seen people come up with inspiration that I think they probably wouldn't have had if they weren't out on their feet.
The jargon for it is that walking is very good for divergent thinking, meaning it's very good for sort of helping produce ideas that we wouldn't have thought of. And whether that is because subconsciously we've spotted something and it's triggered a thought in our heads, or whatever it is, but walking is immensely good for divergent thinking. Walking in nature even more so. Absolutely. It provokes us to surprise ourselves with the things we come up with.